If we work backwards from 100 million stations, global brand, providing free water to every city, whether that's like the New Yorks of the world through our ad model or the developing areas of the world through a model where we're almost like funding one for one and we're like insulating the costs and the innovation. So much needs to go right, right? Everything needs to go right. And it's just like, it's kind of a cascading or domino effect of like good decisions bouncing off of bigger good decisions until you get to that point.
If we had known how difficult it would be, I think we'd be a little bit more hesitant to do it. But I think if you really love the idea, you really believe in what you're doing, and you're able to persevere through like all of those challenges, like I would just say like keep believing in yourself, even if people don't. And if you have that energy and it's infectious and you kind of like continue to push through, like you will make it.
Jorge and Cristina, welcome to From Vision to Creation. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today.
Thanks for having us.
You guys are building something remarkable with Hope Hydration. Your hydro stations are rethinking public access to clean water, free, filtered, chilled, and available in high traffic places around the world. You've already passed 2 million refills, partnered with major events and brands, and recently raised a $20 million Series A to scale even further, which is huge. Congratulations. Your mission is powerful and simple: free water for everyone with zero plastic waste. I'm excited to explore how this mission started and how you're turning that belief into a real world impact.
Yeah, I'd say Hope is kind of the culmination of my background, Christina's background, and our third co-founder, Dave, who is an engineer, his background as well. Previous to starting Hope, I had spent about a little under 18 months building out an iOS and Android app that mapped every free water fountain you could find in the world. We get a call one day from a company called Apple who said, this is really interesting data. We'd love to put it on every iPhone in the world. We have 1.5 billion iPhones. This is really powerful data at scale. 23 years old, really excited, of course. And we were doing kind of use testing in cities. And I remember I was in New York City, middle of the summer, really hot. I was off the subway on 43rd and 7th, and I opened up the app and I'm going to go test it. And the nearest public drinking water fountain that wasn't a Starbucks was like a 35-minute walk. I had to go up to the Upper West Side, and there was like a cluster of them in a park. And I go, there's no way that 99.999% of people are going to go out of their way, even 5 minutes to do that, let alone me. Right? And why isn't there a water fountain near Times Square? And at that point, I'm like kind of looking up, and you've got all these link kiosks going up, and you've got just like a really big focus, I think, on like civic innovation or public innovation. And I said, well, what stops us from like putting free drinking water on every street corner of Manhattan? That was the first question I asked myself. The second question I asked myself was, does that model scale from New York to other major cities around the world? And then the more I thought about it, the third question that popped up was like, okay, let's like wave our magic wand. If we could like find a way to design, fund, install, of course, and maintain this level of infrastructure in every single major city around the world. So you can fly to Tokyo, you have it in New York, you have it in Bali on your vacation. Could that be like a capital vehicle and an infrastructure vehicle, maybe even a data vehicle to help like address the world water crisis? And it was like way too big of a question to leave unanswered. So we started Hope. So my background comes from water. I'll let Cristina give her background on, what she's done. She has a really amazing background. And then our third co-founder, who's not here, I'll speak on his behalf. He comes from like a really like heavy industrials engineering background. He worked in the railroad industry. So he came in with kind of under the guise of like, okay, if this infrastructure is going to exist and we're going to install it, it's got to be able to last like decades. And he brings that, you've got trains going over train tracks like all day, every day, and those things have to work. And then Christina's background.
Yeah, I came in, I met Jorge at Cannes Lion. If you guys are familiar, it's kind of like the Oscars of marketing and advertising. They're awarding the best commercials in the world, Festival of Creativity, they call it. And Jorge is there and he has this idea about building water stations and funding free water access. And my background has always been in fundraising and kind of mobilizing capital to solve world issues. So at NYU, I studied sustainable development, made my own major looking at, how do we solve poverty? Who's trying to do it? Governments, nonprofit, business. And what I learned was that the combination of the three is necessary to make an impact in the world. And when I met Jorge at Cannes Lion, he had this idea of kind of combining those three forces to solve this water access issue. And my sponsorships brain, I had always been working in like, how do we unlock capital for these issues? Said, wow, what if we put advertising on the screens? What if we brought in brands to help fund this problem? And Jorge was like, that's exactly what I was thinking. We were just talking to a brand who asked us to do this. I'm like, let's do it. So yeah, my background has always been in unlocking capital, whether that's through nonprofits, working with public policy, government stakeholders, businesses to fund world issues. And that's where I met Jorge. I thought he had a crazy, amazing idea and that maybe my background could help bring those stakeholders together to make it a reality.
I love that. It's like a match made in heaven when you guys both of you. So Jorge, the mission that you were pursuing and your background along with Christina's background, you guys got to talking and you're like, hey, we have this really cool idea and now a model that basically pays for itself, which I think is really genius. When I was looking into Hope Hydration, that was the thing that really stood out to me the most. Well, actually, two things. One, you guys are solving a huge issue, actually multiple very big issues, one being plastic waste, another being public access to clean drinking water. And then third, that advertisers are funding the model, which is super amazing. Once you guys realized that this is how you guys wanted to scale the business, what were the early problems that you guys faced in implementing this model? Because I know it sounds amazing, but I'm sure it was a journey to get there.
A very good question that we don't get asked enough, because the road that turning something from an idea on a piece of paper into like something real that now lives on 47th and 7th in Times Square is a journey. I have a couple points, and then I'm sure Cristina has maybe better points. I'd say one, we'd be remiss to not mention, like, Cristina and I are business people. Like, this is an engineering and like operational feat as well. So at the beginning, it was the three of us, and then we've been expanding the team. We've got an unbelievable team that, like, you have to be able to design products, innovate really fast. They need to be like manufacturable. They have to be installed. So now you're like hardware into operations. We have a huge kind of focus on data. We have our own OS. They're all cloud connected, so there's a software component. Once they're installed, great. Then you have to be able to sell like digital media to brands, get in front of brands, and like showcase why. So I think like the first and foremost is we've got a small but unbelievable team that spans all of those different pieces and like are able to move really fast and really agile in an ever-changing world. So that was a challenge at the beginning. Was like it was just three of us. I think the unspoken challenge, the biggest challenge, was we started during COVID. Like we started at the point where like governments could not think about like their public water infrastructure, and brands were not spending outside because no one was outside. And it took us about 18 months. We started in May of 2020. And it wasn't really till about 18 months later that the world like started reopening. It wasn't like fully reopened. So it was like us being extremely nimble and extremely like just to a fault saying, this will work. We just need to like all of the circumstances need to align. Okay, great. We have, I don't know, 18 months, 20 months. No one knew at the time. We have this time period where like we can have these conversations, but likely like the installations won't happen. How are we best spending this time? And I think one of the biggest like pivots or innovations that we had to get to market was Christina's idea. 18 months later, the cities weren't fully reopened yet, but events were. And we made a hard pivot. We said, well, let's start as an event solution, right? Let's test the model there. And that has ended up being like a very successful, arguably standalone business of the unit, is servicing the Coachellas, the Formula Ones of the world. So I'd say those two are like the biggest challenges for me that we faced. I don't know, Cristina, what you think?
Yeah, I think of two immediately. The first one is that building something out of thin air is really hard. Like you're imagining this amazing water station with screens and data and water coming out and it's super cold. And how do you get from that idea to a physical product is incredibly hard. And I give Dave, our third co-founder, a lot of credit because that was his problem. We're like, hey, we have this idea, Dave, can you build this? And he's like, okay, like starts drawing on a napkin. Those napkin sketches did become a lot of the design that we created and manufactured. But I think learning that process from idea to MVP to an actual manufacturable product is very slow, very difficult. Like, I think making a physical thing is one of the biggest challenges we faced. And without funding, right? We were like convincing people, give us the money to create this thing. Doesn't exist yet. It's just an idea. We promise we can make it and it's going to look really nice. It's kind of a hard sell when, especially Jorge and I have no like manufacturing engineering backgrounds. I think the business side was easier, but there I think the biggest challenge we face is that it's kind of a flywheel. Investors were like, call us when you have your first prototype. And we're like, how are we going to have a prototype if we don't have an investor to help us create a prototype? Brands are like, great, we'd love to have this at our event. Do you have one yet? We're like, no, right? So it's like, you have to build the product so you can get the investors, so you can do the event. It's like this domino wheel, but you're always in a chicken and egg situation. And also, not everyone said yes, everyone said no. So I think the third challenge was just hearing no over and over and over and over again for like 2 years. And even worse than no is the kind of, yeah, maybe call me when you have a prototype. We call them, we have a prototype. Call me when that prototype's in the ground. How do we get it in the ground? So I think, yeah, I would say hearing no repeatedly, the kind of actually idea to building is really hard. And then third, that chicken and egg where people are like, yes, we will do it if you have this. And you're like, how do we get this without you, like figuring out that flywheel. So those are a little bit, but everything is hard. It's all challenges, to be honest. So I would just say you got to be up for the challenge.
Well, you guys, I relate to this on a very spiritual level because I invented, patented, mass-produced, and introduced a new kitchen appliance to the US market. And it was the same thing. It was like, show us the prototype. It's like, well, it's just an idea right now. And so everybody says no. And then it's funny because once it works out, then suddenly everybody knew you could do it, right? But before they were telling you no, like a few months back.
Through that, especially through the investor landscape, because unless you come from money or have a lot of access to money, like that is the first thing. The only advice I would go back and give myself in that regard is like, if anyone tells you, call me later, like politely tell them, no, that's all right. It's probably not a good fit anyway, because they're not that interested, right? Find the people who, for us, like Adam Draper and Boost VC backed us way before the venture landscape would, right? He trusted me. We got to know each other and was like, I'm going to give you money because I think you can execute something. Those types of people, i.e. Boost VC, like they're out there and they want to be the first check in and they won't say, no, come back to me later. They'll either say I'm in or I'm out. So that money does exist, and don't spend your time kind of chasing down the same person. I would send emails for years, right, to the same person, and like those don't work.
Well said, because those people aren't necessarily invested in your mission. They're just, at that point, they're just invested in the success that they can reap from getting in when it's already working.
Exactly.
Well, and so for the audience who is not familiar with Hope Hydration or who has not seen any of your hydro stations, I just want to explain, you guys are setting up these really beautiful hydro stations where people can, have access to clean, chilled drinking water. And on these stations are a 55-inch LED screen where you guys are promoting ads. So it's basically like a billboard that refills your water bottle, which is genius. I love it. The first question that comes to mind for me, as from just a design perspective, is like, where does the water come from? Are there tanks in the machine? Do you guys have access to, the city's water? Is it different depending on where you're setting up, or how does that work exactly?
Yeah, it's different. Some events will have access to water lines, some won't, and in the scenarios where they don't, we have to like find a water source. We have to bring it. But 99% of our installs, we're tapping into existing infrastructure. So if you're Times Square, if you're an airport, if you're a stadium, if you're a gym, you likely have access to water. You probably also likely have drinking water fountains. And so our value prop there is we make it really easy to in our opinion, way upgrade the product, the experience, and the data that you're getting while turning it into a revenue driver where you make money. So that's, I'd say 99% of our installs where we're going in and there's access to a water line and we're able to like install in 40 minutes. It's like pretty fast.
And one thing that I'm also wondering about, and I'm sure you guys probably spend a decent amount of time answering this question, why is it that cities aren't more invested in providing clean, drinkable water to their citizens and tourists?
From my perspective, I think that they are. They do have, ordinances where they have to provide a certain number of water stations, bend over fountains, whatever it is. Even in California, we've seen things like the Green New Deal that enabled all of the LA agencies to have a budget for refill water stations. I think that they care. I think that the challenge is funding and maintaining that. So it seems like they don't care because you see a water fountain and it's outdated, it might not work, has gross hairs in it, and you're like, feels like this city doesn't really care about this. When you speak with them, most of them are interested. They just can't believe that there's an option that doesn't require so many of their resources. It's really tough when we tell them, no, this is truly free for you to install. Like, in fact, we'll even give you a share of revenue. We'll pay you. They almost can't imagine it, which makes it difficult, right? We're like, no, genuinely, it sounds too good to be true. It is. So I think it's just that there hasn't been a model that is sustainable and scalable for the way that cities operate and the resources that they have. That's my perspective. I don't know, Jorge, what you think.
That is to me the single biggest reason why we don't have free water on every street corner. And I think I'll paint it as a picture, right? The three of us, we band together and we say we're going to open up a gym tomorrow, right? We have $100,000 to work with. Well, we've got to get the space, we've got to rent it, we've got to do the build out, we've got to buy all the gym equipment, we've got to get a front desk, we've got to get computers, we have to remodel the bathrooms because they don't work, so on and so forth, till we're getting towards the end of the budget. And typically, from what I've seen, water fountains are on the budget, but they're way at the back, right? So, okay, we only have $500 left. Okay, let's go to Home Depot and just buy a water fountain. We're a gym, we can't not have a water fountain. Great, let's do it. So we're working with this much budget. Oh, but what about the cost to install it? What about the filters? What about, someone slammed their really large 48-gallon water bottle and broke the machine. That isn't accounted for. So you're limited to a relatively really small budget, which gives you access to a relatively little amount of options. And then you haven't accounted for the long tail costs of installing it, maintaining all this stuff. So access to capital for us as a gym owner, the three of us, is well, crap, we need a water fountain. Let's just buy whatever. We came in and basically said, well, hey guys, the three of you have a gym. Why don't we install a Hope machine? We will deal with the installation. We'll install it for you. We'll send you filters. We'll even maintain it. It's going to be funded by our brand partners. In the gym, we might have, Nike or an Adidas or whomever it might be. And whatever they pay us, Hope, we're going to actually give you money back. And so now really the challenge, of course, great. The hardware is better. There's a lot of data. I don't have to pay for it. Like, amazing. Our goal is, we know the model works. We need to get in front of as many people in the world. We need as many microphones and megaphones as possible to say, hey, we're an option. We're still a startup. So like, we don't have the brand recognition that like some of the other players do, but yelling into that microphone in as many different ways as possible, saying, hey, if you're a landowner who has a lot of people who wants a water fountain, call us. And then on the other side, if you're a brand who wants to advertise in a very, very like intimate way where you get people to actually stop and refill, and you're exchanging like your message for free water, also call us. And as long as we can continue doing those two things, I think we'll be surprised at how much of this vision we can see through.
Yeah. I was just thinking also one last thing about like why cities maybe haven't adopted this or kind of gotten on this wave. No pun intended there. The water space just has not been innovated in a really long time. I think most major industries in the world have seen a digital transformation. You can order food from your phone. You can do absolutely everything on the internet. And I think traditionally the water space is behind. It hasn't yet hit that innovation. Like, we don't know much about our water. We don't know where it comes from. We don't have data on it. Like, and I think in the civic space, providing water is just seen as it's always been seen, right? So there's not even this inkling of like, we could innovate, we could have different ideas, different options when it comes to water, because we haven't seen it yet. So I think that's another thing, is just like the space, the world of water is behind in technological innovation. So another reason why I think these kinds of solutions haven't been adopted.
Another really great thing about your business and the model is all of the data that you're collecting. After collecting data for years now, has there been anything that has completely blown your mind or kind of shocked you guys that you weren't expecting to find?
I think a ton. I think like at the base layer, you just collect different data streams. You collect who's refilling, when, where, why. And you go out to the market and you say, this is what we've got. Here are the derivatives of that data, right? Very simple stuff that we can like extrapolate. Is it interesting to you? You know, what do you have water? What do you currently have access to? I think like the biggest thing that surprised me, we were on call with a large US city, their water and power group, and we had asked them, how many water fountains do you currently have? And they said, oh, well, we have no idea. You have to like send someone out with paper and a clipboard, and they go on site and they check the box and they press the button. Oh, it worked. They check another box. Okay, cool. Looks pretty clean. They check another box. And I was like, what a solution that just base layer told you that this station exists and it works. Be interesting. And they were like blown away. And I was like, what if we could quantify minute by minute the number of refills, compare the number of refills to X location to another location, extrapolate that data and give you a heat map of usage, which should correlate to a heat map of like traffic. So think a park, like 40 water stations in the park. We can tell you kind of where movement is ebb and flowing based off of refill data. And they were like just shocked. And like, that's just scratching the surface. So to Christina's earlier point, like there isn't, if you look at public drinking water fountain data, there isn't any related to water fountains. And so this, what I just mentioned, is scratching the surface, but you can go like way layers deep where you're like really capturing really interesting insights, and like the derivatives of those insights like help shape our product roadmap and where we're going and how we're doing things, and like has turned into kind of our internal OS and like how we most efficiently manage the contract through the install, through the maintenance, all this stuff. So it is really, it's a rabbit hole that we could go for an hour. But once you like get into it, you're like, wow, this can help the people that are hosting. This can help our advertisers. This can most importantly help the people refill. This could really help us close the gap between contract to install, or install to the next maintenance needed, push that out. So there's a lot there. We could have a whole hour talk about like what's interesting. Why.
It's so true. And I think that the way you guys are utilizing IoT technology is brilliant. For listeners who don't know what IoT is, can you guys kind of explain what that is and how you guys are using it in your model?
IoT is Internet of Things. So think like connected devices. Christina mentioned before, like everything in our world is like connected and tracked all day, right? I have an Apple Watch. It can tell me how well I slept last night. It can tell me my heart rate, how many steps I took today. Like every facet of our lives have components that are tracking different data, and different piece of data are interesting to me versus interesting to you versus interesting to Christina. Like that doesn't exist right now in water. And so we view our hydro stations as kind of like this beacon for all different types of IoT devices that track different things, whether it's water related, whether it's usage related, whether it's like, heat monitoring and being able to promote certain brands when it's really hot versus other brands when it's really cold. And you think about that kind of nuance, like you've got like an electrolyte company and a snowboard brand. And like, if we can then use like just the ambient temperature outside to promote one or the other, like there's an efficacy on like purchase. You don't want to be promoting a snowboard in the middle of the summer. Maybe you do actually. And like electrolytes in the dead of winter. Let's contextualize both of them. No, that's all enabled by different types of IoT.
Yeah. I think what gets me really excited is obviously water is the core function and advertising of our station. But if you think about 1 million water stations on every street corner of the United States, and you see these machines as a Trojan horse a little bit, where you can begin to provide Wi-Fi, I don't know, track traffic patterns, check the pollution in the air. And you can have so many different touch points around the US that could begin to inform even bigger sustainability, city infrastructure issues. I think it becomes really, really interesting. And obviously, I think we'll start with water. Like, what can we do with the information we have around the consumption of the water in our stations? But we can work with really smart other people that can help put sensors into these stations to make them a lot more interesting to a larger audience as well. I remember we talked to some city that asked us if we could have some sort of like traffic beacon that could help optimize their waste management routes throughout the city so they would cause less pollution and be more efficient. And I was like, wow, this is where you begin to see that like scale and IoT technologies can really change the world in a big way. And I think for me, that's what Hope has always been about, is like disrupting and how we can move the world forward. Yes, with water. Yes, with sustainability. Also, what else can we do? And I think that's a later phase of innovation. We're still mastering the basics here and reaching that scale. But I think it's really, really exciting when you think about all the technology that's out there that could be placed in our stations.
And I had a thought after you said the citywide one. At the core of our brand is we want to be an adventure brand. We want to help like water helps you be person, right? It brings all life, and we really kind of extrapolated that. Wanted to be a water solution that helps your adventures, whether your adventure is to a local park, to a local beach, or going halfway across the world. And so like a cool example of what IoT can do in a really like fun, adventurous way. LA28 is coming, and there's obviously like tons of infrastructure happening in the city. Is there a world in which we, install 1,000 stations across LA and we let each country that's participating in the Olympics like brand wrap X percentage of stations, right? And then they almost create kind of like a gamification. Like if you're from that country and you're coming to LA to visit, go see these very specific stations and refill at them because they're like representing our countries. And then suddenly you have a leaderboard of like, yes, which countries are winning the most gold medals, but like which countries are like activating their fans, going to really cool places like Griffith Observatory or Venice Beach or whatever. Like, and you've got a leaderboard of refilling, which is like allowing the audience to participate in like an Olympic style contest during the Olympics. That like is something that's really fun, really exciting, I think would get a lot of people engaged, and that is enabled through IoT.
Now that you guys have a model that's proven, you guys say, okay, this works and it works in multiple ways, and we have the data to back this up. What is the current challenge you're facing now to get to the next level in your business?
Scaling is really hard. I think scaling a team is really hard, scaling manufacturing, scaling operations. When I think about our current challenges, it's okay, now we've unlocked something that works. What direction do you want that to go in? And how do we continue to get there and continue to grow? And we're thinking about, yes, how do we get to the next 500 stations, but also how do we get to 100 million stations? And I think graduating from being very founder led, Jorge and I are like literally doing the installations with Dave, just being involved in everything and kind of like letting go and putting the right people in place so that you can get to that next level. I think as a founder is hard, you know, you have to kind of unlearn the fact that you're involved in everything and figure out like what are these systems that are going to allow us to reach scale, and building that while executing, I think is a really hard task. It's like you have to continue to execute the day to day, but you need to be putting in place things to reach 100 million stations, and that balance is tough. So for me, it's all around the scale and the growing pains. I don't know, Jorge, do you have anything specific that comes to mind?
Yeah, if we work backwards from 100 million stations, global brand, providing free water to every city, whether that's like the New Yorks of the world through our ad model, or the developing areas of the world through a model where we're almost like funding one for one and we're like insulating the costs and the innovation. So much needs to go right, right? Everything needs to go right. And it's just like, it's kind of a cascading or domino effect of like good decisions bouncing off of bigger good decisions until you get to that point. It's for me, it's people, right? It's bringing on the right people, giving them like clear direction to run in, all the freedom to run in, anchoring that like North Star point, saying we're all running together, and people is like the people who work here, people is our community, people is our investors, people is people like you who we have conversations with, right? Like I think if we do an amazing job, we're yelling into microphones or megaphones. And we're saying, hey, if you're someone who wants free water, please call us. If you're a brand who wants a really engaging platform to be able to communicate to, please call us. If you're an innovator who wants to be part of this mission, like, please call us, we're hiring. If you're an investor, well, like, please call us, right? And so our job really is like less now, quite literally installing, because we did that some years ago, and now really like finding who are the best people to bring on as part of this mission, and saying you're an investor, you want to work here, come work here. You're part of our community. How can we have a conversation with you? You're a location, let's install. You're an advertiser, let's advertise. And the culmination of finding the right people in all of those facets, I think, is how you maximize your chances at getting to that North Star.
That's well said. And, the reason I asked too about like, challenges at the beginning, challenges now, is that I think it's really important for people, especially, younger people who are just starting their careers or who have a mission that they feel passionate about, that they want to build a business around, is to hear that you're going to be faced with challenges. It's not going to be easy, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it or that you're doing the wrong thing. And I feel like, both of your stories in this particular mission, it's just super inspiring to hear that you guys are literally, and this is, by the way, this is like my favorite kind of story. People who are like, have an idea, but have no proof at the beginning, and yet they're able to convince people and make it a real thing. That is quite literally the ethos of this entire show, from vision to creation, because the tenacity, the grit, the hard work that it takes to make something happen. I mean, the only way out is through. It requires blood, sweat, and tears. And I think that hearing stories from people like you are super helpful in, future generations, because just knowing that it's going to be difficult and that's okay, I think that removes some of the fear in getting started.
Totally. And I think if we had known how difficult it would be, I think we'd be a little bit more hesitant to do it. But I think if you really love the idea, you really believe in what you're doing, and you're able to persevere through like all of those challenges, like I would just say, like, keep believing in yourself, even if people don't. And if you have that energy and it's infectious and you kind of like continue to push through, like you will make it. And I think another big thing that got us through all those challenges was like listening to people a lot smarter than us. And like, you don't have to listen to them blindly. We got so much advice, some good, some bad. But I think if you can like really evaluate where your idea needs help and like listen to the right people to continue to push it forward, I think anyone can do anything. And so I would really encourage people to do it and just, be prepared for a bumpy ride.
Yeah. I think like I always view it like little like meta, where everything we interact with on a daily basis is either comes directly from nature or is built by humans. And those humans were most likely not much smarter than we are. Like, okay, so if it doesn't come from nature, it was built by someone. What stops it being built by you? Nothing, right? You need to have the vision, you need to have the grit, you need to say it's going to be really bad, and you need to have a support system. You need to have a marker that you can wake up to and say, this is kind of the direction we're going in, but I'm not really sure, but at least we're going to run in this direction. And like, to Christina's point, I like firmly believe with those constraints of like everything we interact with is either comes from nature or built by humans. Like, you can do anything. It's just a matter of time and like getting out there and being smart about how you get out there, right? You're stuck in your living room all day. You're less likely to have a black swan event than if you're at a local coffee shop where all the investors hang out, right? So being smart about where you go and how you go, I think is a piece of it, but it will happen. You just have to like push.
Yeah. We often ask, like, does it break the laws of physics? Like, is it possible? Unless it breaks the laws of physics, like, we believe we could probably do it. So that's our insane perspective on life, on building a company. Has worked so far. Now we start asking, like, at what cost though? We can do it, but at what cost? But yeah, we truly believe if you're out there, you're thinking about starting your thing, go for it.
Well, and this is also a really important topic, and we've actually talked about this on the show several times. Right now, we live in a society where, especially on social media, trying hard is like frowned upon. People want to look like effortless and like they kind of aloof and don't care. But that's so misleading, and it's such a destructive. It's so destructive, because that is not what gets people ahead. You don't just like effortlessly, waltz through life and solutions come without having to put, time and energy into things. So again, like another reason why I love having this conversation with you guys, because people need to hear this. If you're not going to try hard, you're probably not going to do that well. And the thing is too, it's like, why wouldn't you want to try hard? That's the other thing that kind of confuses me.
Yeah. I get the aura farming. Like, I'm not Gen Z, but I understand it. There was so many times at the beginning of the company that both Dave and Cristina were like, Jorge, this is cringe. Like, this is bad. But like, you need to be okay with cringe. Like, if you're not okay with cringe, you've just like minimized your likelihood of success by like many factors. Mm-hmm. If you're like unapologetically cringe, you're like, I don't care. It's in the furtherance of this thing that I wake up to get towards every single day. This like metaphorical North Star that you've put that in 3 years I want to be here. And you're like, I don't care. I don't, whether it's with family, I'm going to go to Thanksgiving dinner and they're going to be like, what are you doing? This is crazy. This is cringe. Or going out to like networking events and like pitching your soul away. And it's super cringe. Like, it is I won't say a necessity because I'm sure there are ways around it, but like it maximizes your chances a lot. So if you're not okay with that cringe, and like aura or aura is on the other side of cringe. If it works and everyone's like, wow, amazing, you're so smart, like you're chasing aura, then sure, it's years down the line if you're successful, but like you have to be okay with just like
Climbing
doing
cringe
what
mountain.
it takes. Yeah, climbing cringe mountain. And Christina's got the
can't
quotes
take
today. Climbing
No,
cringe mountain and does it break the laws of physics?
Yeah, I saw this woman who was an astronaut activist. I wish I had her name off the top of my mind, but she was at South by Southwest talking about you have to conquer Cringe Mountain. You have to climb to the top and get to the other side. Talk about yourself, talk about what you're doing unapologetically. It won't look effortless, but once you climb that mountain, you can get to the next level. And I think Jorge was amazing at modeling that. I still struggle with it. But it definitely opens so many doors for us. So you got to put yourself out there for sure.
An easy way to reframe it if you're like nervous about going out, doing this pitch, whatever, is like put yourself in the shoes of you in 10 years. If everything, like, here's your magic wand, we've waved it, everything is going to go perfectly. Like you're going to hit your North Star and some on top of that. You're like, in our case, we have quite literally put free drinking water access on every street corner of every city around the entire world. Like, close your eyes and just imagine yourself at that point. Are you going to look back and say, well, you know, those first 2 years were super cringe? Like, no. Is anyone going to look back and be like, oh, I remember that time you showed up to that pitch event and you did not stop pitching your heart away? No. You're going to like frame it as part of the story that led you to get to there, right? And so it swallow whatever that like initial fear is and be like, the ends really justify the means, and just climb the cringe mountain.
Also, once you get over Cringe Mountain and things are going really well, you'd be surprised that people who thought you were cringe are all of a sudden really impressed, always believed in you. Like, so don't worry, it'll turn around.
That is so funny. And I've never heard that. You have to climb Cringe Mountain. That is so funny. And it's so true. I've never shared this on the show, but I'm going to say it because it very much applies here. When I first started doing this and I was getting like a few views, everyone was like, oh, it's cringe. Like, how do you do this all the time? And now, like across platforms, the views are in the millions. We're pacing to hit 1 million subscribers before the end of next year. And those same people are saying the same thing. Like, you were made for this. This is what you're meant to be doing. Like, where was that energy 3 months ago, you guys? But
100%. And maybe
PSA. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, maybe that's another thing that I realized is like we had, of course, our haters, our skepticism, around us. But I think surrounding yourself with people that like kind of like push you forward in those, moments and really like encourage you to keep going or are just there for you. Or like, I think you also really have to have a good support network where like, even Dave and I would say to Jorge, like, oh, that was so cringe, but like, let's go, like you need those people around you that are going to like be there when you're doubting yourself the most. I think that's another really critical one. Cause if you're just surrounded by people saying like, that's so cringe, bro. Like, I don't know, like it's tough to keep it going on your own.
Yeah, I think that's one of my PSAs or takeaways of today is if you're listening and you're not planning on starting something, you have a role, right? Like you are now knighted. I don't know if there's like a woman version of knighted, but you have now been knighted as like the hype person for your friends who are going through this like early journey of starting a company. You don't have to relate, you don't have to empathize, you just have to hype them up and like know that the road is hard. If they make it, you seldom, this may be my personality, I seldomly remember the haters. I seldomly remember the doubters, but I can tell you exactly every single person who was critical in the early days of like either getting me out of like a mental trench because I was stuck in something and I just needed a hype, or someone who like tangibly made one introduction that like change the course of a business, you will never forget those people. And like when you take the journey of being an entrepreneur, it is your life, right? And so to hype someone up. So this is the PSA. If you're listening and you're now, okay, I'm a hype person, like this is that person's life. And this is all they wake up, all they think about, all they talk about, all they do. You like just being there for that person isn't just being there for that person. It is quite literally like being a foundation for the most important thing or one of the most important things in their life. So if you're a hype person, you're the best hype person out there.
Yeah. And I think even beyond hype, everyone has something special, a connection, an energy, a skill that they can contribute to someone else's mission. And like Jorge said, we think back to like, what are the things that went right for this company to be where it is? And a lot of them came from a simple idea that someone texted us, an introduction that they didn't know would lead to anything and literally led to our first installation 5 years later, right? Like, I think beyond being a hype person, which is like, yes, number one, easiest, everyone should do it. Number two is like, you probably can change this person's life without knowing it. So make that weird introduction that maybe you were thinking about, or, you know, send that idea that maybe feels out of place, but like, why not just shoot it their way? Like, you never know what will stick and what will maybe enable the success of an entire company project idea. And to Jorge's point, like someone's like life dream. And that was one of the most fun things when we like closed our fund of rounding. Our round of funding, I sat down and I thought about like, what were those random little things? And it was so fun just to think about like, oh my gosh, remember when that guy emailed us about this random thing and then we took the call and that's how we're installed in Times Square? Like you start looking back and it's just fun to unpack the random moments.
Randomness.
Yeah. And I encourage everyone to see yourselves as that potential person for someone else. And also if you have achieved any measure of success, like I think we owe it to others to pay that forward and pay that back and like reflect on like no one gets there in a vacuum. So I think it's also a responsibility to share those gifts with the world.
It's so true. And if you think about any successful person that you look up to, if you're lucky enough to have an interaction with them, people that do well and are in that expansive state, you know, people who are going to connect you with other people, are going to encourage you, hype you up. That is because they're living out of a state of expansiveness. They're not constricted. Anybody that is successful that you look up to, if you're lucky enough to have an interaction with them, they're never going to put you down. It's the people that are, and I mean, maybe I shouldn't go this way, but
I like that. If you're a good person and you're successful, you are always paying it forward, hyping people up. And I like the cutoff because strive to be that person.
Yes, exactly. If each of you could give a young entrepreneur or someone who's just starting a new venture one bit of advice, what would it be?
I would be prescriptive in advice because prescriptive advice like seldomly works unless you're in someone's shoes for their whole life. I would ask a question and then leave like some lingering advice. I would say, is whatever problem that you are thinking about tackling something that you are totally okay with for the next 3 years, crawling through a swamp that is like filled with alligators and like it's really hot outside and you will just continue, you're like totally okay with that level of like grit because the mission or the problem that you're solving is so like deeply entrenched with who you are or what you want to do or who you want to be? If yes, do not look back. Like start today. Like everyone's going to tell you no. Like the first like 3 weeks, everyone's going to be like amazing. And then after like a month, people are going to be like, what's going on? You're crazy, whatever. Power through it. Like there, you know, if you can metaphorically wave your magic wand, you will get to where you want to be. Okay, great. Now we don't have a magic wand. Your magic wand is you. So like if the precursors, if you're like, okay, trudging through like swampy waters for 3 years and it being really, really hard, then just don't think, just do.
Mm-hmm.
I think I have two. I think the first one is that you have to believe in yourself and your ideas against all odds. You have to be willing to believe. You have to have an imagination of things that are impossible for yourself and for your idea. And you just have to stay committed to believing. So many times you're going to be like shut down, told no, doubt yourself, but you have to hang on to that belief that like you can do it against all odds. And you have to believe in your idea that strongly as well. Because if you don't start there with that belief, then like it'll be very hard to persevere. So I think it's the belief that you can do it at all odds, and that like energy, passion, and like really commitment to believing the impossible is possible. I think that's one. And the second one is do it with the right people, because I don't think this would have been possible without, from Pentair to the brand advertisers to Jorge and Dave. I think we got incredibly lucky with the people that we chose to surround ourselves. And I do think it's a huge part of the recipe to success, persevering, people that you can be in the darkest times with. You need to be surrounded with good people. So mine is believe in yourself at all odds and surround yourself with the right people.
What is the biggest lesson each of you have learned about life in general throughout this journey?
Simply starting your own company is, in my opinion, the single biggest accelerator to like learning in life, right? You learn about yourself, you learn about other people, you learn how to sell, you learn how to build, you learn how to manage, you learn how to like pitch a dream, but then create a business plan to get there. You learn how to get through really hard times. You learn how to be humble in really good times. Like starting a company will take like 30 years, I don't know, 30 years, but 30 years worth of like life learnings and like condense them into like 36 months. And so for me, it's like the single biggest accelerator of learning, of adventure, of experiences.
It's amazing. I think mine is that health is wealth. Both Jorge and I have had pretty serious health crises while building this company. And it just reiterated for me the importance of being like mentally and physically well. You can't follow your dreams. You can't be a good partner, co-founder, boss if you are not healthy yourself. So I think that's another one that is underrated in building a company and maybe a little less spoken about is the importance of health. Without health, you have absolutely nothing. One of our co-founders said to me, like, you think you have 1,000 problems and then you have one health problem, and that's your only problem. And it's true. We've seen it firsthand. And I think we're learning how to reprioritize our health. And I think that's the one that sticks with me is like, you can have a great idea. You can be very successful. But if you don't have health,
Yeah.
So.
Don't stop working out. Go to therapy. Eat good food. Get sunlight. And if you surround yourself with good people, I think they'll be like, hey, Jorge, I haven't seen you work out in like 6 months. And I'm like, oh, yeah, probably should do that.
And you guys, where's the best place for people to keep up with you all personally, but also with Hope Hydration?
Well, as we said, Hope Hydration is my entire life in existence. So you can keep up with me through Hope Hydration. I'm just kidding. HopeHydration.com is our website. If you're someone who wants to host a station, you want free water fountains, there's a contact form there. If you're an advertiser who wants to work with us, you can reach us there. If you're a user, if you're like someone who's in their city and you're like, I wish there was a water fountain in this park or on this beach or wherever, use that contact form. I read every single one of our messages. And then we're on social media. So we're on Instagram at Hydrate. We'll probably be launching our TikTok soon. So keep an eye out for that.
And if you all could each go back in time and offer your younger selves one bit of advice specific to you and your life's trajectory, what would it be?
Mine would be don't worry as much. Like I am a chronic overthinker. I play out 4,000 scenarios for every decision in my head, which is like part of my sharpness, I would say, but also like to my very much mental health, it's a detriment. And so like go back to me at 18 years old. I thought I wanted to be an investment banker, lasted like 90 days on Wall Street, just was freaking out about life. Don't worry about it. Like, I mean, do worry about it, but don't worry about it as much. Like, relax. You'll be all right.
I don't know. Mine was the same. It's just, I think a lot of times we feel like our day-to-day problems are the end of the world, gonna ruin your life, the right or wrong decision, you know? I think just like being more present and less anxious about these questions and decisions and problems, kind of like releasing that a little bit more and being more in the present moment. Not so worried about where we're going to be or what's going to happen. I think just being more present is my advice to my younger self.
Thank you both so much for taking the time to do this. I have so much respect for you both, and I love what you guys are doing. I really appreciate y'all coming on.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us, for asking such great questions. I think it was I feel like I was reflecting on life lessons, on how we built this company, thanks to your great questions. So we've loved chatting with you.
You did really well. It was really good questions.